Greetings, First Presbyterian Church. This week, Governor Kemp announced the reopening of Georgia, following the guidelines that have been provided for the reopening of America by the President's task force. Governor Kemp mentioned that a phased approach will begin to be put in place for activities going back to normal in the state of Georgia. This has created questions. Members and others have asked, what would our plans be at First Presbyterian Church? And today we'd like to outline our specific plans. I want to remind you that we have been tasked as a commission, John Barrett, myself as the lead pastor, and also Dan Boone, ruling elder and physician, to make decisions that are best for this congregation. And we have a desire, as you do, to return as soon as possible to worship together. But we also have a commitment to provide care for all of our members, especially those who are most vulnerable. Our decision is that we will continue to worship live stream morning and evening through May 24th. At that time, we will look at a phased approach to returning to the sanctuary. Obviously, there'll be still some social distancing rules that we'll need to put in place and to think about, and we may not be able to gather all together at once. That's a phased approach that we're looking at. And as you know, worship is vital and important to the life and ministry of our church, but also fellowship is important, and connecting in community is very important. We want to provide a phased approach not only for how we'll return to the sanctuary, but ways that we can begin now to cultivate encouragement, connection, and fellowship. John Barrett's going to talk specifically about how we can encourage fellowship as we prepare to return to full ministry together.
For the past 2 weeks, when the pastors have been meeting on Monday afternoons, we've had the joy of talking about what reopening might look like. And one of the words that keeps coming up in our discussions, it is this word, a phased approach. On Sunday morning, as we've been talking about this phased approach, we've begun to look at two areas. First of all, it's the natural affinity groups of our church. We have both Sunday school affinity groups and our parish groups. We've talked about the idea of inviting those specific groups to the church on specific times. We also have the luxury of many large spaces at this church. In addition to the sanctuary, we have St. Andrew's Hall, other buildings across the street as well that we can broadcast the service. So we've talked about perhaps when we do come back together, not only can we bring specific people down, but we can put them in specific locations. Additionally, we've talked about beyond just Sunday and the worship experience, we want to begin to think for and create fellowship times. We've talked about that even before this May 24th date. Are there some opportunities throughout the week that we can begin to create opportunities for people to gather? Of course, we'd have to be small gatherings. We'd have to continue to look at the guidelines given to us by our state and national leaders. But those are things that we're beginning to discuss as how can we begin to bring people together. And finally, the last phased approach as it relates to the church is our staff. Currently, throughout the week, there are really no staff members that are here. We've begun discussions as to what will it look like to return our staff here on campus in a safe environment to continue the mission of the church. While we don't know the exact date as to when these are going to be taking place, we do know that it's going to be phased. We really feel like we have some opportunities that can really be wonderful and a blessing to the whole church, and we look forward in the days and weeks ahead to finalizing what this will look like.
Thank you, John. In summary, let me just recap what we've said. We plan to continue with live stream morning and evening with the hope of gathering on May 31st. And at that time, we would gather in smaller groups across the campus. We'll be giving you direction for what that might look like. We also look forward to bringing our staff back to campus as we're following strictly the guidelines that have been provided for us. And on a 14-day basis, we'll reevaluate if there are small groups or even small fellowship groups that we can begin to encourage to meet together. Right now, we will continue with ministry through Zoom, through YouTube, and through observing social distancing. But one of the reasons that we feel at peace about this is the way that God has met us in such unique ways and the unprecedented unity that we experience right now. We've seen Him provide for us financially. We've seen the participation in all the ministries and the worship experiences to be beyond what we expected. And we know that God will give us peace and will give us clarity. It may seem that we're moving slower than others, but I want you to know that our concern is the safety of each member, as well as the mission of this church. Join me in prayer as we look forward to what God has for us in the future. May the peace of the Lord be with you always.